It all started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself to sleep at night. My name is Lila, and I've been married to Daniel for 8 years. A good man, stable, reliable, the kind of husband you're supposed to want. But somewhere along the way, the spark faded, and I found myself craving something more, something reckless. That's when he came back into my life, my stepbrother Jake. We weren't close growing up. Our parents married when we were teenagers, and we mostly ignored each other. But when he showed up at my doorstep last summer, something shifted. He was different now, taller, broader, with a confidence that made my stomach twist in ways it shouldn't. The first time we were alone together, it was at a family barbecue. Daniel was busy grilling, and Jake cornered me in the hallway, his voice low as he whispered, "You've been staring all afternoon. You think I don't notice?" I should have walked away, but the way he looked at me, like he already knew what I wanted, left me frozen. The tension between us was unbearable, and when he brushed his fingers against my waist, I didn't pull away. That same night, we found ourselves in the bathroom, the lock clicking shut behind us. His hands were everywhere, rough and impatient, and when he pushed me against the sink, I didn't resist. The thrill of doing something so wrong, so forbidden, made it even hotter. His mouth was on mine, his fingers digging into my hips as he lifted me onto the counter. I could hear the muffled laughter of our family outside, but all I cared about was the way he made me feel alive, wanted, dirty. After that, it became a game. Sneaking around, lying to Daniel, meeting Jake in places we shouldn't, his car, a hotel room, even my own bed when Daniel was away. Every time was riskier than the last, and every time I told myself it would be the last, but it never was. Jake knew exactly how to touch me, how to make me forget everything but him. The way he'd pin my wrists above my head, the way he'd whisper filth in my ear, it was intoxicating. Daniel was sweet, gentle, predictable. Jake was none of those things, and that's what kept me coming back. The guilt was there, of course, but it was drowned out by the sheer need he ignited in me. I knew it couldn't last, but for the first time in years, I felt desired, hungered for. And God help me, I loved every second of it. The weeks turned into months, and the lies piled up like dirty secrets in the back of my closet. Daniel remained oblivious, his trust in me absolute, which only made the guilt sharper when Jake's name lit up my phone. We developed a system, coded messages, burner apps, excuses that sounded just plausible enough. Working late, book club, girls' night. Daniel never questioned me, and that should have been a relief, but instead, it made me reckless. One rainy Thursday, Jake texted me a single word, hotel. My pulse spiked as I typed back, which one? He sent the address, and within an hour, I was there, dripping from the rain, my heart hammering as I knocked on the door. He yanked me inside before it even fully opened, his mouth crashing into mine, hands already tugging at my clothes. There was no slow burn, no pretense, just raw, desperate need. The way he fucked me against the wall, his fingers tangled in my hair, his teeth marking my shoulder, it was nothing like the careful, methodical love Daniel gave me. This was hunger, possession, sin. And I craved it. Afterward, as we lay tangled in the cheap hotel sheets, Jake traced idle circles on my thigh and said, "You're addicted to this, aren't you?" I didn't answer, but he knew. He always knew. The next time was riskier. Daniel was out of town for a conference, and Jake came over my house, my bed, the ultimate betrayal. I should have felt sick, but instead, I felt electrified. We didn't even make it to the bedroom. The second the door closed, he had me bent over the couch, his hand clamped over my mouth to muffle my moans. Every thrust was a reminder of how wrong this was, how good it felt to be bad. Later, as I washed his scent off my skin, I caught my reflection in the mirror, flushed, disheveled, happy. That scared me more than anything, because this wasn't just sex anymore. It wasn't just rebellion. I was falling for him, and there was no way this ended without someone getting hurt. The deeper I fell into Jake's world, the more I started noticing the cracks in my marriage, little things I'd ignored for years. Daniel's predictable routines, his safe touches, the way he kissed me like he was afraid I'd break. Jake kissed me like he wanted to ruin me, and God, I loved it. One night, after another stolen hour in Jake's apartment, I came home to find Daniel asleep on the couch, the TV flickering silently. There was a half-finished cup of tea on the table, peppermint, my favorite. He'd waited up for me. The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut, but even that couldn't extinguish the fire Jake had lit inside me. The next morning, Daniel smiled over breakfast and asked if I'd had fun with the girls. I forced a laugh and said yes, but all I could think about was Jake's hands on me, his voice growling in my ear, "You're mine when I want you." Things escalated when Jake started showing up unannounced, texting me from down the street, watching my house when Daniel was home. It should have scared me, but it only made me want him more. One evening, as Daniel and I were cleaning up after dinner, my phone buzzed. A single message from Jake. "Front porch, now." My hand shook as I told Daniel I was taking out the trash. The second the door closed behind me, Jake yanked me into the shadows, his mouth hot on my neck. "You look good in that dress," he murmured, his hand sliding under the fabric, "but you'd look better without it." I knew I should push him away. Daniel was right there inside, but instead, I let him back me against the wall, let him hike my dress up around my waist. It was quick, rough, dangerous. When I slipped back inside, Daniel barely glanced up from the dishes. "That took a while," he said absently. I swallowed hard and lied. The bag ripped. The thrill of almost getting caught only fed the obsession. Jake started demanding more time, more risk, more me. He wanted me to meet him during my lunch breaks, in parking garages, once even in the empty conference room at my office. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. Then came the day Jake showed up at my son's soccer game. My son, that was a line I hadn't expected him to cross. I sat there in the stands, frozen as he leaned against the fence, smirking at me like this was all some game. Daniel, oblivious, cheered from beside me. When Jake's eyes locked onto mine, he mouthed, "You're next." That night, I dreamt of his hands on me, but when I woke up, it was Daniel's arm draped over me, his steady breathing in my ear. The contrast was unbearable. I started imagining what would happen if Daniel found out. Would he scream? Cry? Would he hate me? Or worse, would he forgive me? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but not enough to make me end it. Not yet, because as wrong as it was, Jake made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. And I wasn't ready to give that up. The turning point came on a Tuesday, the most ordinary of days. Daniel had left for work early, and I was sipping coffee in my robe when Jake's text lit up my phone. "I'm outside, let me in." My stomach flipped, but this time something felt different. When I opened the door, he pushed past me without a word, his usual smirk replaced by something darker. "We need to talk," he said, pacing my living room like a caged animal. I'd never seen him like this, restless, almost angry. He stopped suddenly and grabbed my wrist. "I'm done sharing you," he growled. The possessiveness in his voice should have thrilled me like it always did, but instead, a chill ran down my spine. That afternoon, while Daniel was at work and the kids were at school, Jake showed up again, this time with a duffel bag. "What are you doing?" I asked as he dropped it on my bed. He unzipped it to reveal clothes, toiletries, a toothbrush. "I'm staying," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Panic clawed at my throat. This wasn't part of the game. The sneaking around, the stolen moments, that was one thing. But this was a line even I wasn't ready to cross. When I told him no, his face changed. The charming, dangerous man I'd been sleeping with for months vanished, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. "You don't get to say no," he said, stepping closer. For the first time since this began, I was afraid of him. That night, with Daniel snoring beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Jake's duffel bag was hidden in my closet. His scent still lingered on my skin. I thought about the way he'd looked at me earlier, like I was something he owned. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. I wasn't the one in control anymore. The affair had stopped being exciting and started being something else entirely. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Jake's apartment. He answered the door shirtless, smirking like he'd been expecting me. "Miss me already?" he purred. I shoved past him, my hands shaking as I grabbed every trace of me I could find: a hairbrush, a necklace, the stupid pink toothbrush I'd left there months ago. "It's over," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Jake's smirk faded. "Like hell it is," he said, grabbing my arm. What happened next was a blur: shouting, tears, a shattered picture frame. I don't remember driving home, only sitting in my driveway for 20 minutes, trying to catch my breath. When I finally went inside, Daniel was in the kitchen making lunch. "You okay?" he asked, frowning at my disheveled appearance. "You look like you've seen a ghost," I forced a smile. "Just tired," I lied. But as he wrapped his arms around me in a hug, I realized with sudden, painful clarity that I missed him. Not the idea of him, not the safety he represented him. The man who'd stood by me for 8 years without ever demanding more than I could give. That evening, while Daniel was in the shower, I took Jake's duffel bag from my closet and threw it in the dumpster behind our building. Then I blocked Jake's number, deleted every message, burned every bridge. It wasn't clean and it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Because for the first time in months, I could see clearly I didn't want to lose my marriage. Not for Jake, not for anyone. The days after my confrontation with Jake stretched into an unbearable tension, each hour laced with the fear he'd reappear like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. Daniel noticed my jumpiness, but attributed it to work stress. His comforting hand on my shoulder now feeling like both an anchor and a weight. I started compulsively checking the locks, peering through window blinds at every passing car, jumping when my phone vibrated, terrified it would be Jake's new number flashing on the screen. 3 weeks passed without contact, and just as I began breathing easier, the first envelope appeared in our mailbox. No return address, just my name written in its familiar, aggressive script. Inside, a single Polaroid of Jake's bare chest with my lipstick still smeared across his collarbone, taken that last afternoon in the hotel. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. The next day brought another, a grainy shot of use reflected in his car's rearview mirror, my head thrown back in ecstasy. Each photo was a carefully selected grenade designed to detonate my carefully reconstructed life. I became obsessed with intercepting the mail, racing Daniel to the box each afternoon, but Jake was clever. The next delivery came via courier to my office, an expensive lingerie set I'd worn for him once, now neatly folded with a note, "You looked better out of it." My assistant raised an eyebrow as I shoved the package in my desk drawer, my cheeks burning. That night, I dreamt of Jake's hands around my throat, not in passion but punishment, and woke up screaming. Daniel bolted upright, his face etched with genuine concern that made my stomach churn with guilt. The psychological warfare escalated. Mysterious flower deliveries arrived at our home with cards reading, "Until next time." My favorite coffee shop started making my usual order wrong, exactly how Jake remembered I liked it. Then came the night I stepped out of the shower to find my bathroom mirror fogged, except for 2 words finger-written in the steam: "I'm watching." I nearly collapsed right there, my legs giving out as I slid down the tiled wall, hot water still running. Daniel's patience finally snapped when he found me sobbing in the walk-in closet at 3 a.m., surrounded by torn envelopes and incriminating photos. "Lila, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice cracking with a mix of anger and fear. In that moment, the truth clawed at my throat, desperate to escape. But before I could speak, my phone lit up with a new message, a video thumbnail showing Jake's bedroom wall and my naked back as I wrote him. The game had changed. Jake wasn't just tormenting me anymore. He was backing me into a corner where my only choices were destruction or surrender. That's when I realized this had never been about passion or even revenge. It was about possession. And Jake wasn't the type to let go of what he considered his. The psychological torment from Jake's relentless campaign of reminders left me frayed at the edges, existing in a constant state of hypervigilance. I began noticing subtle changes in Daniel's behavior, the way his eyes lingered on my phone when it buzzed, the extra beat before he kissed me goodbye each morning. He knew something was wrong, but his quiet decency kept him from pressing me. This unspoken tension between us became its own kind of punishment, more effective than any of Jake's cruel games. At work, my performance suffered. I'd stare blankly at spreadsheets, my mind replaying that damning video thumbnail over and over. During a particularly disastrous client presentation where I forgot basic figures, my boss pulled me aside. "Lila, you look exhausted," she said with unexpected gentleness. "Take some time." That afternoon found me sitting in a park I used to love, watching autumn leaves drift onto the path where Daniel and I had walked hand in hand during better days. The breaking point came unexpectedly. While cleaning out my car, a futile attempt at regaining control over something, I found a silver earring wedged in the seat crack. Not mine. My blood ran cold as I recognized it from Jake's stories about his new coworker. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't the only one. All this time I'd been agonizing over our affair. He'd already moved on, using these mind games not out of obsession but habit. The photos, the notes, they weren't the actions of a man consumed by passion, but of someone who enjoyed the power play. That night, as Daniel slept beside me, I made a decision. The next morning, I booked an appointment with a therapist, my first ever. Dr. Chen listened without judgment, as I haltingly confessed everything, her office walls feeling like the only safe space left in my world. "What do you want to happen now?" she asked gently. The simplicity of the question stunned me. After months of reacting, of being pulled along by Jake's whims and my own guilt, nobody had asked what I actually wanted. Slowly, tentatively, I began rebuilding. I changed my phone number, not just blocking Jake, but erasing that avenue entirely. When another gift arrived at my office, I returned it unopened with a single note. No. Not angry, not pleading, just a boundary, firmly drawn. The small acts of reclamation added up, deleting old texts, donating the dress I'd worn during our first encounter, even rearranging the furniture in our bedroom so the space felt new. Daniel noticed the changes. One evening as we washed dishes together, that mundane marital ritual I'd once taken for granted, he casually mentioned how nice it was to see me humming again. The ordinary sweetness of the moment brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Later, when he reached for me in bed, his touch tentative as if asking permission, I didn't think of Jake. For the first time in months, I was fully present with my husband, not as an escape or out of guilt, but because I chose to be. Jake didn't vanish completely, of course. Mutual acquaintances occasionally mentioned seeing him around town with various women. I'd nod politely and change the subject, the news landing with surprising lightness. The fear and obsession that had once consumed me now felt like something that happened to another person in another life. The final unraveling happened gradually, like stitches slowly coming loose from a well-worn garment. One rainy November evening, as Daniel and I decorated our Christmas tree a full month early because the kids had begged, I found myself genuinely laughing for the first time in what felt like years. Daniel's terrible rendition of Mariah Carey's holiday hit, the way our youngest son carefully placed every ornament in one small cluster, the warmth of spice cider in my hands, as ordinary moments began to stitch together the frayed edges of my life. I kept seeing Dr. Chen, not just to untangle the mess with Jake, but to understand why I had let myself fall into it in the first place. Through those sessions, I began to recognize the quiet dissatisfaction I had buried beneath years of playing the perfect wife, the perfect mother. The affair hadn't been about Jake at all, not really. It had been about reclaiming some lost part of myself, even if I'd gone about it in the worst possible way. Jake's attempts to reel me back and grew increasingly sporadic, then stopped altogether. I later heard through the grapevine that he'd moved across the country for a new job. There was no dramatic goodbye, no final confrontation, just silence where his presence had once been suffocating. I expected to feel relief, and I did, but there was something else, too, a quiet sadness for the woman I had been, the choices I had made, the pain I had caused. Daniel and I began the slow, unglamorous work of rebuilding trust. It wasn't the sweeping, cinematic reconciliation you see in movies. It was small things, leaving my phone unlocked on the counter, coming home exactly when I said I would, answering his hesitant questions with complete honesty, no matter how much it hurt. There were setbacks, of course, nights when he would withdraw, moments when the weight of what I'd done settled between us like a third presence in the room. But we kept choosing each other again and again. One evening, nearly a year after everything had imploded, Daniel handed me a mug of tea and said, out of nowhere, "I think I've forgiven you." Not "I forgive you," as if it were a transaction completed, but "I think I've forgiven you." An acknowledgement of the slow, imperfect work of healing. I didn't cry not then, but later, as I lay beside him in the dark, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, I let the tears come. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, but out of something like gratitude for the messy, complicated love that had somehow survived my worst mistakes. The affair had been a wildfire, burning everything in its path. But in its wake, unexpectedly, new things began to grow. Daniel and I started dating again, awkward, earnest dinners where we rediscovered each other beyond our roles as spouses and parents. I picked up painting, something I'd loved as a girl but abandoned in the rush of adulthood. And slowly, without fanfare, I began to forgive myself. I wish I could say everything went back to normal, but that wouldn't be true. Normal didn't exist anymore. What we built in its place was something more fragile, more honest, a marriage that had weathered betrayal and chosen to stay. It wasn't perfect, but it was real.